A long time ago, I made a video about the importance of Halo, how it shaped the gaming community, esports, online gaming, how it's to this day it's a series that stands out in a crowded genre of shooters, how and why it's one of the greatest games of all time. Master Chief is one of the most iconic gaming characters ever, up there with the likes of Mario, Sonic, and Pikachu. If you want to see that video, I think I have it on the screen at the end of this video or soon right now. We'll see when I get to the editing process of this video. Now check it out, after you hopefully enjoyed this long video. Now, as today we have a similar discussion, but about a game called Dark Souls, a franchise known as the Soul series. And before getting into it, I'm not going to include Bloodborne in this discussion. Sorry for the fans of that game, but it doesn't capture what the other Souls games did. And Bloodborne does count in the Soulsborne series, or if you want to throw Sekiro in there, I don't know what the name would be for this. That would be like Sekiro Soulsborne. I don't know. We are primarily going to be talking about Dark Souls and Demon Souls, but for the most part, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3. We will briefly mention Dark Souls 2. We will briefly mention Demon Souls 2, but the big portion of this video is going to mention the two big top sellers of the Souls series, Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. So let's start things off with Demon Souls. It is the game that started, the Soulsborne series of games. Demon Souls is an interesting game as it's not, the Halo Combat Evolved or Halo 2 of the Souls series. It's the game that has, a cult following. Not as many people played Demon Souls as those that played Dark Souls. Mostly because Demon Souls was a PS3 exclusive, so PC and Xbox gamers didn't get a chance to play it. But at that time, most gamers were playing Madden 10, Batman Arkham Asylum, Guitar Hero 5, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, Halo 3 ODST, Uncharted 2, Dragon Age Origins, and most importantly, Demon Souls 2 came out the exact same time frame as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. 2009, the year Demon Souls was released, was filled with releases of a shit ton of games that year, and Demon Souls itself released the same month as one of the biggest games from a very popular video game franchise. In all of gaming history. Modern Warfare 2 is one of the biggest names in gaming history. Demon Souls released the exact same month as that game. They also had the start of two well-received franchises, Batman Arkham Asylum, and you had the Batman Arkham series, and you had the Dragon Age came out within the same fall. So when you think about that, Demon Souls really had no chance. It was on one platform. It released the same month of not just a Call of Duty game, but the Call of Duty game. Dragon Age Origins was a game with a similar looking, but most Dragon Age Origins was a game with a similar look to a Demon Souls, but it was made by a well-known developer in BioWare with the high off the success of Mass Effect, but also being published by EA. So marketing was up the ass for that game. Batman Arkham Asylum and Ultimate Alliance 2, two of the best superhero video games ever made, was also there. So you have this console exclusive game being released around all these juggernauts. I only knew Demon Souls existed because my cousin had it. I barely paid any attention to that game. Just kept seeing him pull out the Ethernet cord every now and then because he would die. Even to this day, I haven't played Demon Souls. But that's more so because I don't own a PS3 or PS4. I'll talk more about Demon Souls in a later video, but that's the gist of it. Demon Souls suffered because it was an exclusive. It suffered because it released at a window where there was way too many games coming out, and a lot of games that came out that year in that fall were games that were the start of franchises that are huge, popular franchises in the gaming industry. Again, the Batman Arkham series, Dragon Age, Modern Warfare 2 came out the exact same month as Demon Souls. When you hear things like that, you understand why Demon Souls wasn't a huge success. But let's move on to the game that really pushed From Software into being in the upper echelon of development teams.
Hey yo, Big Daddy Gwino.
Damn! Dark Souls is a phenomenal game. There is something that is something you've heard so much about this game since it first came out. Lightning in a bottle is what I heard someone call it. A masterpiece, a work of art. A game from beginning to end that holds you, immerses you, gets you engaged. The lore from the second the narrator speaks to the moment you light the final flame. But even games, works of art that seem so perfect have flaws. Dark Souls isn't a flawless as fans, reviewers, the media tries to make it seem. It has physics issues, limitations by its engine, broken mechanics, areas that make you not want to play the game, like the Crystal Cave or bosses like the Bed of Chaos that make you question the ideas of developers. No wonder who in the hell actually thought this was a good idea. Yet you keep playing it. I have 4 characters on 360. Well, 3 characters on 360, and I have 4 on remastered. And I'm thinking of making a 5th. Now that's 7 characters, potentially 8 characters in one game that I mentioned has a boss that makes you not want to play the game, makes you want to install, in an area that makes you just dread the progressing through the game. Yet why? Why do I still want to keep making characters? Why do I want to keep playing the game? Why do I want to keep doing New Game Pluses? Because even with those flaws, the game is still so amazing. From its combats, to its areas, to the rest of the bosses, to the enemies, to the NPCs, visuals, the atmosphere, the soundtrack. I always say the most underrated thing in a video game is the atmosphere. If the game doesn't have a good atmosphere, for me, it will fail. Now, I will not enjoy it. I have to love your world before I can love your game. Mass Effect and Halo are my favorite franchises in gaming. Those games have amazing worlds, great atmosphere, from the second you see Chief and Shepard until the end. Same with Dark Souls. From the second the narrator tells you about the lores, the fight against the dragons, until you the player, light up the final flame to end the game, you are immersed. There's a beautiful atmosphere when it comes to Dark Souls. From the moment you hear the music at the menu screen, everything around you in this world is filled with lore. Every item, every enemy, every NPC, even the dead bodies with soul items are tied to lore. Those bodies are humans like you that died on the path that you are on and left behind an item to help you, the chosen undead, achieve your goal. Think of how deep, immersive, and amazing an atmosphere has to be for a world to where that's an actual part of your game. The dead bodies that are littered around the Dark Souls games that have a soul item, those aren't just random bodies. Those are bodies of other warriors who tried to go along the same path as you, but died, but they left behind an item for you, so you, the chosen undead, can achieve your goal with the help of them. Such a great game. People wanted more, but From Software's director Miyazaki was done. Dark Souls was supposed to be a one-game series, like Demon's Souls before, but Bandai Namco saw the hype, the popularity, the money, and wanted more. Gamers wanted more. So without the brilliant mind of Miyazaki, From Software was ordered to make Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 is the black sheep of the Dark Souls, franchise, the Soulsborne franchise. It wasn't as well received as Dark Souls. Fans didn't love it. It to this day is considered, it's criticized so much. You can go on YouTube right now and just type in Dark Souls critique in defense of Dark Souls, and you just see a shit ton of videos on all the things wrong with Dark Souls. Dark Souls 2, without the brain of Miyazaki, seemed off from the jump. You turning it on. The world wasn't the same, the atmosphere wasn't the same, NPCs weren't the same, bosses weren't the same. This was a different game from the ground up. Slow, clunky, not as fluid or smooth, felt limited, world design not as captivating, bosses not memorable, the game itself not memorable. Dark Souls 2 by itself is a solid game, but it pales in comparison to Dark Souls 1. So inferior in every way. Inflated difficulty created by increased gank enemies, numerous gank bosses, so many pointless, irrelevant NPCs summon size all over the place, and you care nothing for them. As decent of a game as Dark Souls 2 is, it was a huge step backwards for the Souls series. Dark Souls 2 is so flawed, from its bad frame rates to its inability to tell you exactly what certain things that for your leveling do, like adaptability. There's some rings in the game that have very stupid descriptions. Let's not talk about how terrible the frames can be. How awful a lot of the mechanics are when it comes to too much healing. There's too much healing in Dark Souls 2. Going into the really bad netcode, especially for PvP. A lot of the really bad I don't remember what you would call it, but a lot of times when you're playing Dark Souls 2, and even if there to be an enemy or be a PvP or an invader, you would literally roll out of an attack, but it still hits you. Dark Souls 2 is such a flawed game, but it's still a good game. But it's a very flawed game. But much like Demon's Souls, I will go more in details about Dark Souls 2 at a later date.
Lord Vader.
Yes, Master.
Rise.
Returns Miyazaki, ready to return to making, Dark Souls, ready to bring the franchise back from the mediocrity that 2 left it in. Dark Souls 3, the most successful Souls game, the game that made From Software and Bandai a shit ton of money. Everybody was playing Dark Souls 3. People who didn't play RPGs, people who had no interest in dark fantasy games, people who never played a Souls game. This was the peak of Souls in its popularity. Dark Souls 3 was a perfect Souls sequel. The perfect sequel to Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 2 was its own thing, not really following Dark Souls path whatsoever, whereas 3 was a true sequel. It felt like such, phenomenal like Dark Souls 1. Atmosphere is so amazing once more. From the second the narrator speaks until you light that final flame after you fight the Soul Ascender. Remember bosses around you. The game has, from the first boss to the Abyss Watchers, to the Soul Ascender, to Yorm, to Nameless King, the bosses were so memorable. And everything about them was so good and so steeped in lore and so interesting, and their design was so good. The bosses of Dark Souls 3 are so nice to just look at. Their arenas, everything about them. Even the DLCs gave us bosses like the Slave Knight Gale and Sister Freed. The soundtrack is so good, the combat faster, more smooth, mechanics better, but still not great. Dark Souls 3 is an amazing game. It returned to every NPC mattering, from Greyrat to Yol to Sigurd. Every NPC, much like Dark Souls 1, mattered. Dark Souls 2 suffered from having too many useless NPCs in the game. Very few NPCs in Dark Souls 2 mattered. Lucatil being the only one in Gavlin, being the only ones who actually cared about. But Dark Souls 3 returned to having every NPC that's in the game mattering. It's interesting, steeped in lore. You care about every individual you come across in Firelink. Be it someone that stays there for the entirety of the game, stay there for a few progressions, then die or attacks you, or just one passing by. NPC quest lines that immerse you, makes you even care more about those characters. Sigurd quest line tying into Yorm. Henri's quest line tying into yours if you want to become the Lord of Dark. Lore in Dark Souls 3 is great. Dark Souls 3 itself, the popularity birthed the growth of Souls on YouTube. Souls streamers. A lot of people who are big when it comes to YouTube, when it comes to Dark Souls, they got where they got because of games like Dark Souls 3. It birthed streaming it with Dark Souls, and those people went back to play and upload and do guides for Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Demon Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne, mostly because of the success of Dark Souls 3. The Dark Souls series as a whole birthed a new genre. Soul-like games is now basically its own subgenre. Games like Lords of the Fallen, The Surge, Remnant from Ashes, Cold Vein, Neo, and so many others. Even the new Star Wars game, Jedi Fallen Order, is part of this subgenre. Games inspired by Dark Souls, copying its style, its mechanics, its system, its idea. The importance of this legendary franchise, it spawned its own genre. That's its importance. It spawned its own genre. It inspired developers. Even in small ways, Dark Souls and its impact is in other games. Being an important or legendary game franchise is more than just being good. It's inspiring and impacting others around you, leaving a footprint in the industry. Dark Souls, much like Halo, Mass Effect, Elder Scrolls, Mario, Sonic, Call of Duty, Tetris, and other are iconics because they left a footprint within the community. Even if you don't even like some of the games I just named, they left an impact. They left a footprint within the industry of gaming, and thus they are icons. Well, that's it for this video, guys. If you made it this far, I'd like to say thank you for watching. I hope you will enjoy it. Leave any thoughts you have in the comments below. Again, thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Follow me on Twitch. Link to that in the description box below. Peace out.